Welcome to Film Detour, a podcast where two longtime film buddies take you down and around the back alleys and side streets of cinema.
With the occasional left-hand turn.
I'm John Napick.
And I'm Bob Mueller. So let's go. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's hit it. Today we're talking about The Long Goodbye by Raymond Chandler. The 1973 version, directed by Robert Altman and starring Elliot Gould and Sterling Hayden.
And some interesting character actors. Henry Gibson.
The old Laugh-In guy.
Laugh-In. And Jim Bouton, who is a ball player. Mark Rydell.
Mark Rydell's amazing. Mark Rydell
He's amazing.
He steals the show, man. He's fantastic. Mark Rydell was a well-known actor, but very much later he became a very big movie director. He directed The Cowboys. He directed Cinderella Liberty and On Golden Pond.
Is that Mark Rydell?
That's Mark Rydell.
Holy Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, I recognize his name from those movies. I never put two and two together.
I knew he was, I was actually thinking, Jesus, that's the same guy, but it is the same guy.
Yeah.
Is the 1973 version of The Long Goodbye, directed by Robert Altman, and adapted from the novel by Leigh Bracket.
Leigh Bracket, who wrote The Big Sleep. Interesting that, Robert Altman would get her to write the screenplay.
Right.
Because it's a very 70s movie, but there's so many elements to this movie that call out 40s, like
absolutely.
detective.
Absolutely.
And it's so intentional.
Yes,
it's so funny.
absolutely.
It's so wonderfully done. And we can talk about that as we go through the movie.
Well, it opens up. You can see this is where he's going right away. It opens up with the 1940s "Hooray for Hollywood" song.
Which is like contrasting old Hollywood with new.
Right.
I mean, it's total 70s. They have this kind of crazy apartment building with the elevator at the top.
Right.
The hippie girls next door doing yoga. Naked, always naked.
Doing yoga.
Yoga. And the only person smoking in the movie is Elliot Gould.
Right.
He mumbles to himself.
Yes.
It's this great contrast between 70s beautiful L.A. and old Hollywood.
Yes, absolute positively. The other thing is he's driving a 1948, I think.
I think it's Lincoln.
It's a Lincoln Continental, yes.
It looks so out of place.
But what's great is he even has the white wall tires, the big white wall tires as well.
Yeah.
So it's all these different elements working into it.
And so we open up and he's feeding his cat.
I love all the cat stuff. The whole cat thing is very, very funny. He wakes up and you see all these, they look like scratches on his on the wall behind him, and he's using these old wooden matches, which is also a 1940s thing. You can strike on any surface. Right. He just strikes it behind his head and lights a cigarette up. He's still in bed, and the cat is meowing at him. And it shows a tender side to Marlowe because it's 3:00 in the morning. Yeah. And his cat is meowing and he wants to eat. So he tries to make up some half-assed make-believe cottage cheese and some salt and pepper.
Salt and pepper for a cat? I feel bad for that cat's kidney. What the heck is going on there?
The thing is, the cat's not buying. He knocks the whole tray over face down.
What's the name of the food the cat likes?
Curry.
Curry
brand.
I've never heard of it. Maybe it's a California thing.
Did they make it up? I don't know. It's a curry brand cat food. So he goes to the supermarket at 3:00 in the morning.
Of course, he goes out, and what's out on the balcony?
The hippie chicks are doing meditation.
In the middle of the night, having a party, whatever they're doing.
Mr. Marlowe, can you get us some brownie mix?
Some brownie
mix.
What
kind of brownie mix you want? I get the fudgy type and the regular type.
I mean, does it matter? Because are they adding something to that brownie mix? I don't know, but
I think it doesn't matter. I think they're hash brownies. So,
one thing about the cat, though, I just have to say, he has these beautiful women out there. He doesn't ever really make a pass at them. I mean, he's like a lonely guy. Yeah. He's like out of time in this movie. And I think they do this intentionally. He mumbles to himself. Yeah. He's alone, and his only friend is this cat. Yeah. So it's interesting. Maybe they thought, let's put this 40s detective right in the middle of the 70s. It's just like a funny little setup, I think.
Right. I heard somewhere along the line an interview with Robert Altman, and he was saying the way he was looking at it was a Rip Van Marlowe.
Van Marlowe,
like Marlowe had basically fallen asleep for 20 years since the last Marlowe type movie was made, and just kind of woke up and here's the L.A. that he's involved in. Yeah. Vilmos Zsigmond did the cinematography, and I always think of Vilmos Zsigmond as really like this really heavy-duty colors and whatnot, and this is such a stark looking movie. It's so bright. It almost hurts your eyes. It's that harsh sunlight that you get in L.A., and it reminds me of the books, the Chandler books, because you feel that hot L.A. oppressiveness.
Well, the other movie that Out of the Past kind of has that feel.
Yes.
Instead of like a dark noir, there's like this very sun-drenched kind of feel to it.
But it's there's many seedy things going on in that hot.
Now, did Vilmos Zsigmond go on to do McCabe and Miss Miller?
Yes.
So I wonder if in that movie they do a lot of flashing of the negative.
Yes.
I wonder, I mean, I think I read it for this movie. I'm not positive. Maybe they did some of that for this film to kind of give it that look, that pastel-y look.
Yeah, they were talking about something along the lines of they established in the sunlight.
Yeah.
They were gonna flash it 50%. So to really make it really burst out, really wash out.
Flashing the negative is where they literally took the negative in the lab and flashed light across it. Is that correct? To give it kind of this milky tone to it. Like the blacks weren't crushed black. They were kind of milky-ish.
Right. And it would make it grainy too as well.
So he goes to the store, and what's funny is, like, he walks in, everybody knows him, or the guy with the big 70s hair, Mr. Marlowe.
He's looking for the. He's looking for
the
curry cat food. He's got curry brand cat food on his brain. 3:00 in the morning. He's sleepy, and he goes and he tries to get it, and he can't find the normal brand, and he just takes whatever brand he can find.
He sees the stock guy. And
the stock guy says, "This stuff's all the same stuff. Don't." It doesn't make any difference.
He
Just
goes,
take
don't you have
one.
a cat? And the great line is, what do I need a cat for? I got a girl. Again, Mr. Marlowe alone with his cat, wandering L.A.
Just a little aside here, there's an interesting factor to the music. John Williams did the music, and
sung by.
The lyric is done by
Johnny Mercer.
Johnny Mercer, correct. So the theme song, The Long Goodbye, is really the only music in the whole movie.
Yeah.
There are different versions of it in almost every different scene.
Okay, so he goes to the supermarket, he can't find the food, he gets another brand of food and brings it home. He stuffs it into this curry cat
He
can.
makes the cat wait outside. He closes the door. Okay, this is kind of pet owner he is. You know about pet owner, John.
Oh, yeah.
So, he's got a pet owner he is. He keeps the cat outside the kitchen, and he starts fumbling around in there. He takes the brand X or another brand and stuffs it in one of the old cans of curry brand cat food. Yeah. And he lets the cat back in. He goes, oh, okay, you're already going. He spoons it out, and the cat's just not buying it.
No.
He
won't go for it.
No way. Forget it.
And Maul's like, well, that's your problem, basically. He doesn't care. And that's when, this is kind of when Terry Lennox comes into the picture.
Terry Lennox shows up. It's about 3:00 in the morning.
So we see him leaving the Malibu colony, or he drives to the Malibu colony.
Yes.
So Terry Lennox, Jim Bouton, the actor, is in this kind of convertible.
Yeah.
He goes to Malibu Colony.
He looks like a swinging suave, happening in LA.
And those of you, most people know what this is. Malibu Colony is this exclusive beach colony north of LA. It's guarded. The houses are all along the beach. A lot of famous people live there. And I'm pretty sure the house they shoot in is Robert Altman's house.
Okay.
Yeah. Terry Lennox goes to the colony. He gets to the door. And one of my favorite things in the whole movie is the guard doing Hollywood impressions.
Yes.
And he, throughout the whole movie, this is another Altman throwback to old Hollywood.
Right.
Throughout the whole film.
Absolutely.
And
he actually does Barbara Stanwyck.
Barbara Stanwyck. The first impression in the movie.
Yeah,
Barbara Stanwyck. Who would have thought?
Yeah, right.
And Terry Lennox comes running back out, and we don't see what happens when he goes there, right? Because
he's got scratches on his face.
Right, so we never see what happens.
No, absolutely not.
So he comes back out, he's got scratches, and he ends up at Marlowe's place.
Right.
And he asks Marlowe, and this is in the book, I want you to help take me down to Tijuana. For some reason, he's got to get out of town.
Well, sure. 3:00 in the morning, take me to Tijuana.
Right. So the plot really thickens because
he gets contracted to find this famous writer. His name is Roger Wade.
Who's kind of like a Hemingway kind of writer.
Without question, he is a Hemingway character.
I mean, Sterling Hayden's a big guy. He's got the beard.
He's having trouble writing.
He's got writer's
There's a lot
block,
of Hemingway going on.
Which is causing all these personal problems.
He's a heavy drinker, etc. He's got guns.
And it's a great role. He's so kind of tortured writer. Right. And so you see it because he's drinking. He's not getting along with his wife. You can just see he's just got all this turmoil going on in his head.
But at this point, we don't even know who he is. Right. We just know that this woman's looking for this man, her husband, and She brings in Elliot Gould.
And her name's Eileen Wade. Beautiful English actress. Yes. Nina Van Pallant.
Yeah.
I think that's how you say her name.
She looks like my first love in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Perfect 70s blonde.
And when I looked up this movie, I don't know how the movie did in the reviews and all that, but she got a lot of call out for her because I think she was just such a knockout. She's so natural.
Yeah.
And she feels California. She's got that blonde hair, the dark tan. Yeah. She calls Marlowe because her husband,
Roger Wade
has gone missing.
And she's already checked some of the places he would normally be to go and quote unquote dry out.
Right.
So Marlowe does some sniffing around, and he finds him at a doctor's hospital called, the doctor's name is Dr. Behringer. Henry Gibson plays Dr. Behringer, and he's very, very funny. He's really this little tiny guy, and he's running around trying to stop Marlowe in this really goofy kind of...
So first Marlowe shows up at the desk.
Yeah.
And he asks there's a couple of women at the desk, and you can see Henry Gibson from laughing in the background, and Marlowe's asking for, or Mr. Wade, and he doesn't say anything. He just stands there not like he's hiding.
And he's asking for Dr. Behringer, who he happens to be.
Exactly. He doesn't say. And then Marlowe walks out, and you think he's leaving, but he goes around the corner. It's hilarious. And he starts walking into the property.
So little Henry Gibson, Dr. V or Dr. Behringer, starts, running around in this little weird, goofy Inspector Clouseau manner.
But isn't that such an Altman shot? Like he kind of zooms and you see this kind of goofy guy running through around the grounds. Like he's never run 2 feet in his life, and he's trying to chase Marlowe across the grass.
He doesn't run very well, too.
It's hilarious.
So Elliot Gould goes away and then comes back. And he finds Wade in one of these rooms. And it's a great introduction to this character, Roger Wade, brilliantly played by Sterling Hayden, who is in this room, and you have the little Henry Gibson playing Dr. Behringer, who has tremendous control over this towering figure.
Yeah.
You have this towering figure, this huge guy of Sterling Hayden, and Henry Gibson
6'5"
is almost like at his kneecaps, but he has so much power over him. While they're talking and Dr. Behringer is trying to get the money out of him, we see Elliot Gould at the window, and Elliot Gould starts talking, and he walks up to the screen, and he has his nose pressed on it. He looks like the kids in Christmas Story with their noses pressed up on the on the window, but he does it the whole scene, John. It's
such
so
an
absurd.
Eccentric scene, like he talks through the window
with his nose stuck the entire time on the screen. So he was able to extricate Roger Wade out of the situation and then takes him home, much to Dr. Behringer's dismay. And I love what Roger Wade calls him. He calls him Marlborough, the Duke of Bullshit.
Yeah. Wait, you got to say that. You almost had it. Do it again.
He calls him Marlborough, the Duke of Bullshit.
Good one. And I just have to say this. This has been a personal pet peeve of mine throughout the years. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Vilmos here. The night scenes in this movie are night scenes. Yeah. They're not blue light.
Right.
Like, I cannot stand it when I see movies and they have blue light for night scenes. Right. You've never see blue light.
Right.
This is just like white light.
Right.
It just looks like night.
Yeah. And it's interesting. You see Sterling Hayden acting in a way that I've never seen him before. I mean, he's a terrific actor. He really tapped in, I don't know, to the method or something, because he does these off-the-wall things. He walks up to the window while the dog's barking. He just puts himself down in a position almost on his hands and knees and just starts barking like a madman at the dog because he's aggravated hearing the dog bark on the other side of the glass. So all these really wonderful little things that he does, there's no way that could be in the script.
You read about these things, and I kind of read that Sterling Hayden was kind of drunk every day, or just kind of being who he is. I mean, he was kind of like that character in a way. And there's something about Altman to kind of pull these great performances out of actors, you know? And you're right. I mean, it's such a naturalistic performance.
It's incredible. I mean, he is the character. No ifs, ands, or buts.
He is the character.
You believe that he is this guy. It's incredible.
He's not running around with these like writer cliches or anything like that. He's just like a...
It seems like he's pulling the dialogue out of his mouth. It's just all there.
And that's kind of the way Altman does it, right? I mean, a lot of who knows how many times they shot the scene, if half of it's improvised, I don't know.
It all feels right.
It feels so natural.
Feels right.
Yeah.
Then you see the introduction of Marty Augustine, played by Mark Rydell. So they go upstairs to Marlowe's apartment, and Marty Augustine sees the hippie chicks doing their yoga thing, totally naked, swaying and meditating. And
these guys can't believe it.
And Marty Augustine, who you think would basically see everything, he goes, "Look at this. What is this?" And Marlowe says, "It's all the new Rockettes. They're just training. They don't got no tap shoes yet."
And also, he's got this beautiful girlfriend, and she turns the radio on, and what comes on the radio?
You have the theme song to The Long Goodbye once again.
Again, throughout the whole movie, this song just comes in and out, and it
is the only music.
What's perfect about it, again, is it. I don't know how it does it, because it is a contemporary song, but it's got an old feel to it.
It's Johnny Mercer.
It does have this noirish feel to it, and it just threads its way through the whole movie.
But I also think it's a tongue-in-cheek, at the very least, tongue-in-cheek by Robert Altman, because when you watch the old movies, they have to work the theme song in.
They always have some theme song, and it's like at the nightclub, it's at the this or that, but it works so beautiful here, and it does take you back from this 70s kind of contemporary movie, only 40s. 30 years before the 40s.
Exactly. So Marty Augustine wants to know where the money is. And, Marlowe's like, what money? $350,000 that his friend Terry
Oldham
absconded with.
Yeah.
He went to Tijuana, and he believes that Marlowe knows where the money is.
Right.
And during the course of this interrogation, Marty Augustine's girlfriend, who got spooked downstairs because she heard a noise, she comes up, very soft, gentle, beautiful girl, and she says, could I have a Coke? So Marlowe says, yeah, there are Cokes in there. So she brings, so one of the henchmen goes out, gets a Coke, brings it back, and you could see Marty Augustine getting more and more angry,
and more
angry. So he's getting more and more pent up. You can see how angry he's getting. So he takes the Coke bottle and he smashes it. I mean, it's really shocking.
It's totally shocking.
He smashes it across this beautiful girl's face, breaking her nose, who knows, cheekbones,
she's like
socket,
bleeding.
jaw.
It almost looks like her eye, he takes her eye, but I don't think that's what happens. It's just, there's blood coming from everywhere.
Yeah. So just savage. And she goes running out, the henchmen go running after her, and he looks at Marlowe and says, "That's what I do to someone I really love."
Yeah.
And obviously, he does not love Marlowe in the same fashion. So if he doesn't give up the money, you can't imagine what this guy's going to do to Marlowe.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very shocking, very chilling, very upsetting scene to watch.
Yeah, it's kind of, and again, I read this. I think Altman kind of felt he wanted a scene that reminds the audience that this is real crime, and this is what happens in crime.
Right.
Things are violent. It's not like this romantic portrayal. You know what I mean?
What's interesting, though, Mark Rydell is so good at this. He's so funny. He's so funny. But when it turns, it turns.
Yeah, but
and
like
it's terrifying.
Right, all true, real criminals are psychopaths.
Well, he reminds me of a combination of like twitchy Phil Spector.
Yeah, definitely Phil Spector.
And Martin Scorsese in The Cab and Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
That kind of crazy, kinetic, pent-up energy. As he's driving to the Wade's apartment again in his Lincoln Continental, there's another 40s reference. There's a dog blocking the road just before he gets to the Wade's house. And Marlowe calls out and says, "Get out of the way, Asta."
Yeah.
Well, Asta is the dog from The Thin Man. Asta is the name of the dog in The Thin Man.
Thin Man series, William Powell and
Myrna Loy.
Yeah,
with great stuff.
Asta the
with
dog.
Asta the dog. Yeah, so
who was a big star in his own right.
Absolutely. All right, so Marlowe comes back the next day to check on the Wades and see how Roger Wade is and what he's doing and whatnot. And there's a lot of tension between Wade and Marlowe, because Wade has the impression that Marlowe's got designs on his wife, and maybe the wife is up to something with him as well. He's very paranoid about this. So he says, "Look, can you go take a walk down the beach? I'd really like to talk to my wife." So he starts to talk about how it feels to be a writer who can't write anymore. And he says, it's like being impotent.
Yeah.
And she says back to him, I know what that's like too, which is crushing. Yeah. Because you know what's going on here. You know, he's an older man. He's not as sexual as he was at one time, and
it's almost like you can see their marriage breaking up. I mean,
well, that's what happens in the scene.
Yeah.
This reminds me of the scene in Citizen Kane, where you see the marriage dissolve
at the table,
right at the table. You know, it starts out really nice, and
they're chatting over breakfast.
Yeah, he makes her breakfast, and he's very suave and debonair. And as time goes on, they're just reading papers.
By the end of the montage,
at the end of the thing, it's a beautiful thing.
Papers.
But this is actually even more interesting because it's all done with body language and mood. And
there's a nice shot in this sequence where Marlowe's down at the beach and you actually see him in the
glass
window. Yeah.
But it's weird. It's a
like
counterpoint because it's comedic.
Yeah.
Because you have Marlowe down there just kind of walking on the beach lost, and he's like jumping back from the waves.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're hearing this heartbreaking story coming from Roger Wade to his wife. And what I felt was that, you know, she really doesn't hate him. She really feels bad for him. She still has feelings for him, but she's kind of reached her end with him because of all the drinking and the destructiveness. Here's where the whole Hemingway thing all really comes together.
There's an interesting ending to that, or a point in that scene where he's like, he tells he's going to tell Marlowe about their lovemaking.
Right. Well, he says, you know, why don't you go ask your friend Marlborough Man to ask him when's the last time he made love on a beach in Tahiti. At Point Venus in the lighthouse, and when's the last time he made love in a lagoon in the surf of the Great Barrier Reef and in the blizzard with in a double mummy bag? Yeah, see what Marlowe, your friend Marlborough Man, has to say about that.
And her reaction is, it's not his business.
It's not his business.
And which is very interesting to me because, you know, again, Marlowe is out on the beach. He doesn't hear any of this. He's this private eye. He kind of goes from people's lives to one life to the other.
Right.
He's never involved in real life in a sense. And I think that's what this scene says. It's like he's trying to help them out of this problem, but we're right now in the middle of their marriage, their personal life, and he's totally on the outside of it. He doesn't know anything going on here. It's a very interesting counterpoint when you see him out in the window.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's one of my favorite scenes, yeah.
So right after this is the first time Marlowe goes to Mexico.
There's kind of a Mexican-sounding version of The Long Goodbye when he pulls up in the bus.
Is it on the soundtrack?
Yeah, and he has the dogs, and he has the dogs follow him and whatnot.
And there's all these stray dogs in the street. Yeah.
Once again, there's some sort of dog theme. And as Marlowe walks past, the camera pans around to two dogs humping.
Yeah.
They're playing. There is a funeral that goes by.
Yeah.
And they're doing The Long Goodbye with the funeral.
And it takes you a moment to realize it. Because it's like, this is like an old-fashioned Mexican funeral, and the band's playing, and you're like, wait a minute, that's the frickin' Long Goodbye. This song is everywhere.
Doesn't go anywhere. When Marlowe comes back from Mexico, he goes into the Wades, and they're having a party. And then Henry Gibson approaches.
Dr. Behringer.
And he walks up to Wade, and Wade starts abusing him. He calls him Minnie Mouse and the albino turd. And he's feeling really full of himself. He's got plenty of drink in him and whatnot. So he's just goofing on this guy. And finally, Dr. Behringer says, Roger, you owe me money. I want to get paid. And he's not going to pay him. He says, to hell with you. I have no intention of paying him. And he hauls off. Little Henry Gibson, as Dr. Behringer, hauls off and smacks this hulking man in the face so hard. Yeah. And there's a shock on his face.
Totally brings him down.
Below Henry Gibson's level.
Off the pedestal.
And he doesn't know what to make of it. So it's amazing how much power that this guy, Behringer has over him.
It's kind of sad, the way that he's like having a great time, Roger Wade, big guy, and the shock of this slap just like totally collapses him.
There's an interesting shot. They get up, they go stand over in the living room, and they're standing by the window. Yeah. And the camera starts to slowly zoom in, and it starts to move over. It's a little confusing. It starts to move over toward Mrs. Wade's face. And all you really see in the shot is Elliot Gould's cigarette, and then you start moving over closer and closer to Mrs. Wade's face. And I was thinking, geez, this is kind of an unusual composition. Where's this going? And then it moves away from her and just centers on the window. And once again, I'm thinking, gee, that's kind of strange. What is it? And then you see Sterling Hayden as Roger Wade walking down to the ocean across the beach, and you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, he walks into the surf. And it's, again, it's almost a reverse. It's almost a reverse of that scene where the Wades are talking inside and Elliot's outside.
Yeah, because now he's the outsider.
And like a lot of those, Robert Altman he brought back the zoom. Like he made zooming, which used to be a television thing. He was a TV director, and he made it a real device in films, and that's kind of what that shot is.
It became a real hallmark for filmmaking in the 70s.
So you see Roger Wade walking into the surf while these guys
with his cane.
Yeah.
And you know what he's going to do. He's certainly not going swimming.
And they run out after him.
They try to save him.
They're floundering in the surf. You could see, and like no stunts, no stunt doubles, I should say. They're in the water, and it's nighttime. It's nighttime, and that's a big surf. Yeah. And it's really sad. You see the Doberman run up to the water.
And he brings back the cane.
That's a great shot. He finds the cane.
All he can retrieve is the cane, and we know what happened to Wade.
Yeah.
But I really liked the lighting. You brought up the lighting before. I really liked the lighting of this. It had a real natural feel that it would be of whatever the porch lights and floodlights on the beach would be, and the moon would be. It had that feeling like you were really on the beach, and that cold feeling. You could feel, honestly could feel the cold surf feeling. So when you see Elliot Gould later and Mrs. Wade later had those blankets on, you could see why. It's got to be cold.
Yeah, it's beautiful. This ambient light from the houses, and normally in a bad movie, you'd feel like there was a gigantic spotlight just outside a frame.
Right.
Like lighting, where's this light coming from?
But the light
beach?
source was probably just all the porch lights and whatnot, floodlights from the beach. So I really liked the lighting on that. And it made it feel cold in that respect. And another interesting thing, during the course of that scene, I thought Elliot Gould was terrific.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure if he had a couple of drinks or whatever, but boy, oh boy, did he actually seem drunk, delivering his lines, etc. And I don't mean Foster Brooks drunk. I mean, he actually seemed like he was drunk. So I thought that was a pretty fantastic scene of just cursing out the cops and it seemed like he was pulling dialogue out of his head. And he said, "I'm gonna kick your ass. I'm gonna get Ronald Reagan, and he's gonna kick your ass." The next thing we see is Marty Augustine is sitting up in his penthouse, and he's clipping his nails with a scissor. Okay. And what song is he singing, John?
The Long Goodbye.
Exactly. So we're getting some more mileage out of that. And then the camera pans over, and Marlowe's brought in, and there's a henchman. Yes. And this henchman is somebody who became really well known later in life.
And a governor. Just like Mr. Reagan.
That's right.
This movie has a lot of connections. And you know what? Don't even say his name yet. No. I did not recognize him for the first couple of shots because he's got this mustache.
Yes. And
you kind of see him and then you don't. And you're like, wait a minute. Is that who I think that was?
It's a cheesy light mustache.
But of course, he's got the muscle shirt on.
Right.
And who is he?
It's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, the henchman? 1973. He was a famous bodybuilder by then.
Right, of course. He did
Mr. Universe.
He did Stay Hungry, and he did Pumping Iron. He did Pumping Iron, which is about him.
Yeah.
And he did Stay Hungry, which was his first, I guess, sort of dramatic role.
So then, again, we return to Mexico. So we see Marlowe walking down the road, beautiful trees. He ends up at this house. Yeah. And he walks through, and sitting in the back there
is lying in a hammock.
Just lying in a hammock is Terry Lennox.
Yeah. Relaxed as could be. And very much alive.
Yeah, and Marlowe's totally upset.
Yeah.
And Terry, his supposed friend, is kind of very condescending to him.
Marlowe says, "You murdered your wife." He said, "Well, I didn't murder her. I killed her, but I didn't murder her. I mean, things got out of hand. She was screaming and yelling, and what was I going to do?" And then he explains, "I saw the autopsy pictures.
Yeah.
You bashed her skull in."
Yeah. And Marlowe's a really sensitive guy. I mean, he's a real guy, I should say.
He's a human being.
He's a human being. He's very upset by this.
And this guy doesn't seem to be married to much. Look, it got out of hand, and that's what it is. And
there's a great revealing line from Terry. It says, "Nobody cares except you. You're a born loser."
You're a born loser, Marlowe.
And that's kind of
your problem. You're a born loser.
Exactly. And that's almost the feeling you get throughout the film, because Marlowe's this guy that kind of, he's like stumbling through everything, although we know he's a smart detective.
And right after that, we have a shocking ending.
And Marlowe's like, "Yeah, I even lost my cat," which to me probably is what drove him over the edge for the next moment. And he pulls out his gun.
Blows him away.
Just shoots Terry. Terry falls over into the water.
river and just floats away. And as Marlowe's walking away, who seems like he's got a little spring in his step, he feels like, he did what he had to do. We see
driving
Mrs.
down the
Wade,
same road.
Down the same
trees.
road towards him.
Yeah.
He's walking away from the house. She's driving toward it. Is Mrs. Wade in her sports car going to join up with Terry Lennox and have a grand old time, but she's not going to get the reception she expected.
So that was the long goodbye.
What you think, John?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I mean, I've seen it a few times, and watching it again recently just to do this podcast. Boy, it holds up so well.
It does,
and
right?
And it's interesting because we always think in terms of.
I think you and I saw it way back in the '80s,
a long time ago,
in a retro house in New York, Cinema Village, maybe.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure at the time if I really liked Elliot Gould as the Marlowe character. I had in my head, what you're supposed to be. But watching it now again, he's dead on. He's a really perfect Marlowe, and it's a really great update. Yet at the same time, retro version of the story, because it has all that seediness of L.A. and the bright sunshine, which is what Chandler had envisioned when he created the character of Marlowe.
And it's somehow a classic Altman film, because you do go expecting this, when you first see it, you're expecting, it's Raymond Chandler movie, it's going to be this great detective thing, but it's an Altman film in the 70s.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting contemporary view on Marlowe.
And it's Altman, and he picked the right people for the right cast members, and he just let them go at it, and it's obvious, it's beautiful. Yeah.
But you do get a sense that he loves like all the old Hollywood films, because there's so many of those elements we talked about in this film.
But I also think there's that rebel in him, that a lot of the '70s directors had, of kind of looking at Hollywood like we'd like to thumb our nose at you.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where it's a love-hate relationship. That's why he starts it off with that "Hooray for Hollywood" song, and ends it with it, because here's what's sandwiched in between. This is L.A.
Yeah. He's not just doing the standard detective movie. It's his own take on it, and it's so good.
Beautiful stuff. Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week.
We'd like to thank our friend Glenn Arnowitz for his music.
And of course, our listeners for tuning in.
So join us next week for another episode of
Film Detour.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Film Detour. If you like our show, please help us spread the word. Recommend us to your friends, subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and leave a review.
Go to our website at filmdetour.libsyn.com to leave comments or email us with questions. That's filmdetour.libsyn.com. You can also visit us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.